Hello and welcome to another Divinity Original Sin video. This is the Aerotheurge skill tier list. I promise you this will be the last underlined tier list that I will be doing through each school, just because I want to finalize things and move on with life. And yeah, so whatever I decide here in this video is what I believe things to be in. I'm not going to make any more changes. So, without further ado, we go from unique being the highest to common being the lowest. Some may be unranked for various reasons, which I'll probably touch on when I do that. But without any further ado, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so we're going to start off with teleports. Probably the easiest one to rank out of all the Aerotheurge spells. Straight into the unique tier, top tier. Teleport has great use outside of combat, but inside of combat it's fantastic as well, especially inside of physical parties. Reason being is, well, every party has the benefit of manipulating the enemy's position, so you can clump them together and do more AoE damage, which is going to increase your DPS for the entire party, which is super ideal. But the great advantage of using this inside physical party is that it does actually do physical damage and AoE damage as well. You're going to be using this alongside the likes of corpse explosion, so you can reposition corpses, etc. But yeah, the utility of this is absolutely fantastic. You're going to be wanting numerous party members with this spell. And at 2 Aerotheurge and 2 AP, you know, it's easily accessible for everyone. So S tier for me. And alongside that, we got Never Swap. Doesn't do the AoE damage teleport does, but it does require 1 less AP. You need to be a little bit creative in terms of what you're swapping to reposition things, but once you gain the experience to do that, then you'll be able to do that. The cost of only 1 AP instead, so there's trade-offs between the two, but I think both are very high on the utility chain, and both deserve unique status. We're going to touch on Electric Discharge next. Electric Discharge you pick up from the very beginning of the game. It's a ranged single target spell, does 90% damage for 2 AP, which is, I mean, the damage isn't great, but it does crowd control and it is from range. So pros and cons there. But the major downside to it in comparison to a lot of the other spells is that it is only single target. But during your early venture, you will be using this consistently. Until you get to a point where you clamber upon multiple AoE spells, that it kind of becomes redundant. But yeah, very good early game, very solid in the rare tier. Dazing Bolt leans between the epic and legendary for me. Pros is that it stuns, very large AoE explosion radius, which is great. Can use on high ground, very good range. The downside is the damage is not very good per AP. It's 120% for 3 AP, which puts it on the lower end, but it does have a lot of pros going with it. In comparison to a lot of the other AoEs, the damage is significantly lower, hence probably why I lean it into epic as well as legendary, but it probably just tips into legendary for me. We got jellyfish skin. I believe all the skins in this game are pretty awful. You will not really be needing them at any point in the game, and certainly not at the cost of source. Avoid this one at all cost. And also the bubbles and mass bubbles you will be wanting to avoid at all costs as well, just simply because it just doesn't provide enough to justify using memory or source points for it. All it does is allow you to breathe through clouds and not take damage, and those are just not really troublesome enough to justify trying to counteract it. So they both in the common as well. Vaporize. I kind of like the idea of this spell. It it turns surfaces into clouds. Now that might be useful here and there, but that's it. It's very much here and now. I've played campaigns and I've just really never found myself using it, like almost ever. I'm not saying it's completely useless, but in finding uses for it, very, very, very few and far between. So in terms of actually memorizing something like this, probably never, but this does come on a wand that you pick up in Act 2. So if you're using it from there, fair enough, but I wouldn't consider using this spending memory. So for me, it's in the common. It just doesn't do enough for me personally. So for me, it's in the common. I believe this one's called Thunderstorm. This is where I put in the unique tier list. Very comparable to Bloodstorm and how it functions. If you have multiple enemies up close together, the lightning ticks will hit all the enemies inside of that range. So there's really good damage potential. So 100% damage per tick. So again, it can be very, very strong, capable of crowd controlling, and obviously this is something that takes place over multiple turns. So extremely good skill. One that I think is worth the investment of Apotheosis and all the memory and source as well. So for me, it's a unique one. Now we have Superconductor. Now this can probably be put in multiple tier lists depending on how well you've used it during your gameplay. Now let's just look at it on paper. So it's 100% damage, 8 meter range, 3 AP. On paper, that sounds pretty terrible to me. So if that is how you end up using the spell, it's not gonna rank very, very highly. However, if you gain a bit of experience and understand the potential of it, it will be ranked a lot more higher. So what this is capable of doing is if you're able to position enemies in certain ways, you can get the forks to hit multiple times. So if it's hitting twice, it's not doing 100% damage, it's going to be doing 200% damage, which then changes the game completely. 100% for free AP is not very good, but 200% for free AP is very good, and it's stunned as well. So depends completely on how well you're able to use this. It's not the easiest to get the most out of this, but when you gain a knack for it, you kind of understand it a little bit better. So I think if you're using this in a really, what I would consider a very standard basic way of, if you can hit at least twice, you're getting good value from it. So I'd say probably on balance of everything, Divine is probably where it belongs. 8 meters is quite short range, but if you're able to get on high ground, the range isn't really an issue for you. Obviously, you can use it on high ground, which is a big plus. So yeah, it's capable of stunning, capable of doing good damage per AP. So yeah, I would probably say it's divine worthy as long as you're using it in more optimal ways, let's put it that way. Next up we have Pressure Spike. Now Pressure Spike for me probably leans between Legendary and Divine. This condenses clouds, I believe. So this, oh no, I think it douses fire. Yeah, it douses fire actually as well. Condenses clouds, douses fire. 70% damage, 1 AP. So the damage per AP is incredible. Pros and cons, obviously, you don't need elemental affinity to be getting really good value damage per AP, but if you are, then other things will become better to use. But yeah, no, it doesn't inflict status of any kind. Is used in conjunction with Vaporize, but like I've said during my gameplays, it's just one of those things that very rarely or need to do. But yeah, I think the pluses, the pluses for it really are is a 2 meter explode radius, easy to use, great damage per AP, can use on high ground and from range. So it's probably Divine, and the reason why it's probably Divine is just because of that damage per AP ratio. Actually, I think it's kind of 50-50 between these two, to be honest. I mean, let's think about it, right? For me, like the things like Fireball would be in this category. Now, the damage wins on Pressure Spike, but the burning and the larger AoE really aids Fireball. I mean, even comparing to Daze and Bolt here, granted, the damage certainly sides on the Pressure Spike, crowd control, and potential elemental affinity falls on Daze and Bolt and crowd control. I think it's sort of in between. Maybe I'll yeah, just the fact that it's a smaller AoE. Yeah, you know what? I think I'm gonna side and put Pressure Spike in Legendary, though it can lean towards Divine in my opinion. So yeah, Pressure Spike, I decided to go with Legendary in the end. Chain Lightning, I would probably put it in the Divine space. 150% damage for 3 AP and 1 source point. Can chain up to 8 times. So that's one of its big selling points, is the amount of times it can fork, which makes it quite easy to use as an AoE, and also that it can crowd control. So if you're comparing Superconductor and with Chain Lightning, range wins with Chain Lightning, they both crowd control. Damage potential wins on Superconductor, but it's more difficult to use, shorter range. So I think possibly they're possibly on the same tier. Pros and cons. Okay. I've got favorable winds. What does this do? It provides an aura for your teammates for their movement to be increased by 2.5 meters. Would see more use of this in the early game, because later in the game you just tend to have more jumps and more damage mobility options, so you're not really going to be moving around too much. But all in all, like 2.5 meters is not really worth a memory or actually using as an AP either. So it's not entirely useless, to be honest, but for me it probably goes in the common. 2.5 meters is not enough benefit to use for me. So straight in the common. Next we have Blinding Radiance. Blinding Radiance is something that you can use from the very beginning of the game, and it requires 1 Aerotheurge, does 90% damage, and is an AoE. It's a very short range AoE. Does provide the user with some air resistance. I believe it gives you 20%. And blinds as well. So personally, it's not something I ever consider using. You're using this more of an air battle mage, but I think that's a suboptimal way of playing. Could see use in the early game, but you probably won't be using it at all later in the game. There's not really a lot of enemies that does air damage, but maybe it's just more for your own protection from yourself. But yeah, just things in this game I don't like are touches, or things that require you to be up close, moving, and things that don't benefit from huntsman bonuses. So you could potentially see use from this in the uncommon, and if you want to run an air battle mage, by all means, but for me I don't think it's very optimal. But for me, it's gonna go in the uncommon. It's not that bad that you should completely avoid it and it's useless, because it's definitely not. So for me, it sits in the uncommon tier. Okay, Evasive Aura. Evasive Aura probably goes into the legendary for me. It's for some fights it's extremely helpful, extremely protective. It's really good using. I found a lot of joy using this on my summoner, and the really good thing about this is that you don't actually need skill points to actually get the ability. You just slot it in a neck slot, and you slot a source orb in the next slot, and then you picked up this juicy little ability. Now you're not going to be using this super often, but like I said, it's really good to have your very first character using it, because you pop this. That'll mean that it'll persist for the entire first round, so that your team are protected from physical abilities. And then if you delay your second turn, it effectively persists for an entire 2 rounds, which is massive. So that's why I really value it in that circumstance. There is a number of fights where this will be really useful. Obviously it doesn't protect you from magic, but you know, once you understand what's coming in fights, it's gonna save you a lot of deaths, basically. So yeah, I think it's a very good skill when you need to use it, but I don't see you using this super often. But when you do, it's gonna be great. Okay, we have Shocking Touch. Next, I believe this is 110% damage for 2 AP. As you know, I'm not a massive fan of touch spells. It does stun, which is great. Would be part of an air battle mage type build, or maybe early in the game when you're a bit more restricted in terms of your air spells. But for me, I don't like it because it's a touch spell. You can't do it from range. You can't do it from high ground. So for me, I would leave it alone, but for me, it's probably in the uncommon. Go straight in uncommon. Erratic Wisp provides 40% air resistance, and when struck say, melee or a bow, it will teleport that character away. So it does have some use versus melee characters, because if you get hit, it's going to require that enemy to actually move to you again and spend more AP. So that's the benefit for it. But is it enough to justify using? Probably not. The air resistance, like I said, there's very few enemies that actually use it. So yeah, really the only time it's going to be useful is on more squishier characters that force enemies to spend more AP. But honestly, I think you're better off using like Evasive Aura or Uncanny Evasion instead. Much more reliable ways of surviving. So for me, it's in the common tier. Next up we got the, what should we do next? Let's do Uncanny Evasion. Uncanny Evasion, I'm a little bit unsure where to place it. Now people think, oh, it's actually really good. And it is really good. 90% dodge and 20% movement. Really good, but it's not as... It's not as impactful, in my opinion, as Evasive Aura. We can say, take the very first scenario that I came up with. Oh, you have it on your very first character, pop it on yourself, have it persist for 2 turns, but your other team members are vulnerable. Or if you want to, or you know, the scenarios are pretty much endless with this. Is if your other characters are more vulnerable, and you pop it on them. Like, let's just say that you're a tanky character, and you know, next turn you can't crowd control, and you try to protect one of your more vulnerable members, and you pop it on them. So the enemy has a turn they miss. Then it comes to that person who has the Uncanny Evasion, and then they have their turn, and it's like they already have used up the evasion for like one enemy character's turn. You're not really getting good value from it. So it's a lot trickier to use efficiently compared to a really good way of using the Evasive Aura. Now this does have the potential of being even better. Obviously, you know, say if you're using this on a member that's going at the very end, they're gonna get a lot more use from it. But in terms of just the value itself, it's just really hard to compare it to the aura itself. But anyway, for what it does though, I value these a lot more than say like a Fortify, just simply because, I mean, early in the game, yes, the Fortify will be, you can justify and use them, but later in the game when enemies are capable of one-shotting you, it's a lot better to dodge the blow completely rather than put up an armor increase, which probably won't save your butts. So yeah, I'm gonna put the Uncanny Evasion in Epic. Okay, next we have, this is the Butthole spell, isn't it? Vacuum Touch. Vacuum Touch is actually the best AP. For, AP for damage. I think it does like 80% for 1 AP. but it suffers the same problem as that it's a touch spell, and I believe it silences and suffocates, which are, I mean, they're okay. Suffocation just takes too long. It's too slow in my opinion. And silence is I'd say like a minor CC. But yeah, just so I personally would just chuck it in the uncommon. Uncommon for it's great damage, but lack of taking on huntsman bonuses, and it's short range. And then we come to the vacuum aura. So the vacuum aura is 80% damage per 2 AP, and requires a source, and is suffocates and silences. Like I've already said, suffocating is too slow in this game. You can't afford to be like tickling down their armors. You need to just explode it down, basically, and it doesn't allow you to do that. So it's got a lot of things going. I really like the idea of the spell, and it's really awkward to come up against it if you're running glass cannons. But as a player using this, it's not that great. I find it hard to justify spending source to memory on something that's effectively melee range, and the damage on it is pretty awful. So I personally would put it in the common. I would never touch this. If you're a battle mage type, I guess you could put it in uncommon, but like I said, it's the most it's not optimal playing that way at all. And the only reason why the touch is in the uncommon is because of its great damage, and early in the game you're going to be using it. Otherwise, later in the game you're much better off going ranged attacks that you can use from high ground. And unfortunately, this aura just not do that job. So I would say in the common, but I guess if you want to play an air battle mage, then you will find a use for this, but I'm not really too concerned for it. Suboptimal builds. Smoke cover. Smoke cover is, it just provides some sort of protection which can be worked around. Typically is outclassed by a good number of other aggro dropping spells, so you just honestly, I just don't think you'll find use for it. Honestly, if you're finishing fights in 1 round, 2 rounds, you'll never have reason to use smoke cover, and it's just fully outclassed by things like Comedian Cloak. So yeah, for me, I would just avoid it completely. And then there's the Blessed Smoke Cloud. Now, it's very expensive, and there is ways to use this, but I suppose the way I kind of see it is you can achieve everything that this achieves in fewer steps. Okay, so there's a number of ways of using this, right? You can like gather your party, have everybody be invisible, you can dip in and out of it. Okay, great, but you're taking so long and it's completely unnecessary in my view. You know, you could use it in like, you can use it like I mean, you can even use it in like rogue builds, like with Mortal Blow, but again, it's like just use Comedian Cloak, use sneaking at the start of combat. Like there's just other things that's just better than it. And I believe this is 2 source points as well. That is a killer. Yeah, just for me, I get on just fine without these even existing, but they can support a more cooler, more gimmicky, more fun playstyle. Let's say that. But for me, in this tier list, they both fit into the common tier list. Apportation, I will not be ranking because I see it more as cheesy outside of combat sort of stuff more than anything. And then we have closed circuit, which is probably the most difficult one to rank in my opinion, because it's not where it really belongs, but it's gonna be in a position where it is because of other spells and abilities. Now you pick this, you can pick this up at level 10, honestly. But again, more suited to the battle mage style because you have to be up close. It's 4 meters, so it's really short range. You can't really use this on high ground, so it already goes against things that I believe. But you can't take away the massive damage it can do and the CC effect it has as well. Very hard CC. 220% for 2 AP. That's pretty excellent. But it kind of suffers the same problem as acid spores. Now this is 2 AP plus 2 source points. Now which would you, for me, I would rather be using the likes of Thunderstorm and say that the likes of Chain Lightning before Superconductor, because I'm getting the high ground bonus, high ground bonus, safety bonus. Much easier to use than the short circuit. So I really couldn't see myself really using this ability. And yeah, the only times I would say it was a realistic possibility is for when you are playing as a battle mage. Then as a battle mage. So where I would rank it, I'm not entirely sure, but for me it's just redundant because there is superior options at that stage in the game. You can be using Thunderstorm, Chain Lightning, which I would put is better AP, and they're gonna do more damage because you can use it on high ground. And yeah, fights for me don't tend to last 2-3 rounds, so using this on consequential rounds is just with the apotheosis in mind, of course, as well. I just don't really see it working out that great. So it's not a useless ability, don't get me wrong, but taking into consideration the other options and the pluses that these other options has in comparison to short circuit probably just wouldn't get a look in for me personally. But you know what, if you're playing a battle mage type style, I can't say it's completely useless. So I'll tell you what, I'll put it in the uncommon. But if I'm playing optimally, I wouldn't use it. But yeah. Anyway, that concludes the tier list. Let's just do a recap. We have Teleport, Never Swap, and Thunderstorm in the unique list. Then we have Superconductor and Chain Lightning in Divine. We have Dazing Bolt, Pressure Spike, and Evasive Aura in Legendary. Uncanny Evasion in Epic. Electric Discharge in Rare. Then we have Blinding Radiance, Shocking Touch, Vacuum Touch, Short Circuit in Uncommon. And in the common we have the Jellyfish Skin, bubbles, mass bubbles, vaporize, favorable winds. What's this one called? Erratic wisp, vacuum aura, smoke cover, and bless smoke cloud. Enemy evaporation I've not ranked. So that is the Aerotheurge tier list. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. As usual, thank you so much for watching. See you guys in the next one.